The insurance company should legally not be allowed to incentivize their doctors to inject these experimental drugs into children for thousands of dollars.
Danny, here's a big problem in the United States. This dates back to like 1922 or something. Don't quote me on the year, but it is when the Dodge brothers decided to sue Henry Ford. The Dodge brothers were invested in Henry Ford's automobile company. And I'm going to bring this back to pharmaceuticals, but bear with me. This case went all the way up to the Supreme Court because Henry Ford did not want to pay the Dodge brothers or any of his shareholders a dividend. He said, I'm going to take the money that we're making, I'm going to reinvest it in making the product better, the working conditions better, the vehicles safer, and the factory more productive. And the Dodge brothers said, screw you, we want a dividend. All the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court says that whomever is running the publicly traded company has a legal obligation to maximize shareholder value.
Right.
This is not a moral principle anymore. This is a legal principle. So now you take the chief executives at Pfizer.
What was the name of that case again?
It was Dodge Brothers versus Ford.
Dodge Brothers versus Ford.
And you can look it up, a Supreme Court decision, maximize shareholder value, and you will get the right case, so you don't have to take my word for it. Since the early 20s, every executive of every U.S. publicly traded company is legally obliged to operate the company as if he was maximizing shareholder value. Now, a guy like Steve Jobs didn't give a damn about shareholder value. He never paid a dividend, didn't have a stock buyback or anything because he was so, I guess, obstreperous or something, But as soon as Jobs died, what did Tim Cook do? He started paying a dividend and he started shareholder buybacks. Jobs felt like if you're using your cash to return to investors, it's because you don't have any more good ideas to invest in. But he was an iconoclast. The executives of the pharmaceutical companies in the United States, they are organized as C Corps. They are legally obliged to maximize shareholder value. They are not legally obliged to maximize shareholder value unless you make some people sick. If it comes down to whether they would put patient welfare and well-being first or put shareholder value first. They have a legit argument to say, I am obliged by the Supreme Court of the United States to maximize shareholder value, even if it comes at the expense of patients. As long as it's been approved by the FDA and I'm within the regulatory requirements, I have no flexibility. That is a bullshit reason to poison people, make them sick, to create people who are lifetime dependent upon your project. I'm not defending it on a moral or ethical basis. What I'm saying is we have a systemic problem with for-profit healthcare in the United States, and we cannot rely upon the pharmaceutical companies to fix it. We can't shame the pharmaceutical companies into behaving better. What we need to do is, get them off the airwaves. They're the biggest advertisers, so of course they own the mainstream media channels. So shut that down. But we also need to move them to B corporations instead of C corporations.
Yes.
A B corporation is allowed to be for profit, but it's organized for public benefit. It's not a nonprofit. It's a for-profit corporation organized for public benefit. We must remove from them this crazy-ass constraint that says for-profit healthcare is more obliged to the shareholders than it is to the patient. So that's another policy change that we can make. The idea that we could murder or shame our way to better behavior inside these publicly traded C corporations is a fantasy in the extreme. We need to reorganize the way for-profit healthcare works in the United States to change the incentive constructors and constraints under which they operate. So I'm not defending murder. I'm like real bad with that. And I'm not disagreeing with the people who are criticizing the executives who are lying, cheating, stealing, moral scum in the way that they have behaved. What I'm saying is we need to operate at a higher level, a more systemic level, to dismantle the mechanisms, that is, the infrastructure of healthcare in our country that has gotten us to this miserable state where life expectancy in the United States hasn't improved since like 2012.
Right. Well, it is optimistic to see. I just saw this, I think yesterday, that and maybe you can find this, Steve, to confirm it. But I saw that RFK did something where he made it so pharmaceutical advertisers now have to list every single one of the side effects on all of their ads, and that was
what was your reaction to that?
I thought that was incredible. That's a huge step in the right direction.
But I listened to these ads, and I thought they already were listing. Explosive diarrhea, instant death.
They are, but they only have to list a small percentage of them, and they can also say go here for more details. But before, I guess 1997, they had to do all of them, and that literally would like triple the length of their commercial.
Yeah. Okay, so the FDA recently sent out, I think it's more than 100 cease and desist letters to advertisers. Because of this policy change, the ads must change immediately. And I guess the FDA has said, you need to pull those ads down now because they no longer
So when did this happen, Steve? When did this actually get implemented?
This is very recent.
Yeah.
Like even in the time scale of podcast rules.
This is talking about what you were talking about.
No. Find the new thing.
The new thing, right? I'm still looking for it.
If you search for the FDA cease and desist letters, you'll probably find it.
Yeah, it should be like the top of the news. Like it should be on the top of every single news site right now.
I was really happy to see that because pharmaceutical ads target patients because they work. Like they wouldn't be spending all this frickin' money if bypassing the physician didn't work. Ask your doctor if Stifacel is right for you or whatever the hell. Mm-hmm. So this is FDA launches crackdown on deceptive drug advertising from September 9th, which was 2 days ago.
2 days ago. There we go.
And I was glad to see it.
U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Food and Drug Administration today announced sweeping reforms to rein in misleading direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising. Today, the FDA is sending thousands of letters warning pharmaceutical companies to remove misleading ads and issuing approximately 100 cease and desist letters to companies with deceptive ads. In addition to enforcing existing law, the FDA is initiating rulemaking to close the adequate provision loophole. Oh, okay, that's what it was called, the adequate provision loophole created in 1997, which drug companies have used to conceal critical safety risks in broadcasting and digital ads, fueling inappropriate drug use and eroding public trust.
So this is Marty Makary is running the FDA. I think he's called the commissioner of the FDA.
Okay.
Before he was appointed, he was a Johns Hopkins professor who was vocal anti-lockdown. He's like, these lockdowns aren't helping anybody.
Yeah.
These policies are hurting people.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Blind Spots. And in this book, he was cataloging important medical misconceptions, things that medical doctors believe that just weren't true and needed to change. One of those was hormone replacement therapy for menopausal women. Stands out in my mind because it's related to ice baths and cold plunge and sex hormone balancing. What he did not include in there was this relationship between testosterone and prostate. Doctors used to think that elevated testosterone would increase the risk of prostate cancer.
Right.
Absolutely false.
Yep.
Dr. Abraham Morgentaler, he's down here in Florida, and he has done exhaustive work revealing that misconception. So part of what fuels or perpetuates these misconceptions, and we have reams of data that you'd think would overturn it, but part of what fuels that is two things. One is advertising to the public, these drug ads that lie to the public about what the drugs do. And the other one is called continuing education credits. That is advertising essentially to doctors, to physicians, to people who have advanced degrees and are licensed to practice, calling it continuing education to try and bring them up to speed on the latest drugs or whatever it is. These continuing education credits, which are often required to maintain licensure or status within professional societies, they are all funded by pharmaceutical companies when it comes to medicine. So there's two levels of advertising. This one that we're seeing, which it looks like Marty Makary is working with Kennedy to shut down. There's a whole nother level that we don't see, which is it is the pharmaceutical companies that are writing the textbooks. It is the pharmaceutical companies that are giving away the seminars to the medical schools. It is the pharmaceutical companies that are running the continuing education programs for physicians so that they can continue to brainwash otherwise intelligent people into thinking that something like a testosterone blocking drug would help their patient when in fact the data says increased testosterone is associated with protection against prostate cancer. So incentives are screwing up everything in medicine right now.
And there's the other hidden layer that a lot of people don't see, where pharmaceutical companies are responsible for tons of content on the internet being buried and suppressed, which is another huge problem.
Depending upon which data source you cite, iatrogenic injury, so these are medical errors, or these are injuries caused by medical treatment. Iatrogenic injury is either the third or the first leading cause of death in the United States. You don't see it on the leaderboard when they say, hey, these are the top 10 leading causes of death or something like that. They always delete medical errors or iatrogenic injury. But when you include it, it either shows up number 1 or number 3, depending upon which state or which data set you believe.
What does iatrogenic mean?
So it's one of those fancy words that I had to learn because we don't learn it in. Is that a Greek
word or something?
We could look up the etymology of iatrogenic.
Iatrogenic.
Yeah, I can hardly pronounce it when I'm like recording for my audiobooks. It's very embarrassing. So we can just say medical injury, and that can result from surgical
hospitals,
errors, pharmaceutical interactions that people weren't aware of, accidental overdoses, prescribing the wrong drug to the wrong person, being unaware of medical allergies.
It's from Greek.
Physician.
From the Greek word iatros.
Producing. So iatrogenic
physician
means
or healer.
Produced by a physician.
Wow. Yeah, we were just talking about this the other day, how it's like the number 2 cause of death in the U.S.
Yep.